The crystal chandeliers cast cold light across the grand ballroom as Serena Sterling stood at the podium, her platinum blonde hair perfectly coiled, her gray-blue eyes scanning the crowd with calculated precision. Effective immediately, she announced, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade through silk. Clinton, Dante, Dermot, Larissa, and Beatrix Sterling are hereby removed from the Sterling inheritance. Gasps rippled through the assembly. 5 pairs of eyes, burning with betrayal and rage. Hours later, in the empty parking garage, as rain hammered the concrete, Serena paused, mid-stride. Before her, Henry Carter knelt in the downpour, his janitor's uniform soaked through, his calloused hands working desperately to clear a drainage grate. Lightning illuminated his weathered face, and in that electric moment, something cracked in Serena's steel-wrapped heart. Serena Sterling had earned her reputation as the Ice Queen of Sterling Corporation through years of calculated decisions and emotional distance. At 34, she commanded a billion-dollar empire with the same cold efficiency her father had taught her before his death. Her designer suits were armor, her corner office a fortress, and her heart a vault that no one had successfully breached. The childhood memories of relatives who'd smiled while stealing from the family trust had taught her that warmth was weakness, that love was leverage waiting to be exploited. She'd watched her mother's sister drain accounts meant for charity, witnessed cousins forge documents for personal gain, and learned that blood meant nothing when money was involved. This morning's announcement wasn't cruelty. It was survival. The 5 heirs she'd disinherited had shown their true colors in the audit reports scattered across her desk. Clinton, with his embezzlement schemes hidden in subsidiary accounts, Dante, and his violent intimidation of board members who questioned his authority. Dermot's creative accounting that bled maintenance budgets dry. Larissa's media manipulation that had nearly triggered 3 lawsuits. Beatrix's backdoor negotiations with competitors. They were parasites. And Serena had chosen to cauterize the wound. In their place, she would establish the Sterling Social Impact Fund. Transparent and accountable. Everything the family had failed to be. Henry Carter's story was written in the scars on his hands and the permanent ache in his lower back. At 36, he possessed the kind of rugged handsomeness that came from honest work rather than gym memberships. His shoulders were broad from years of manual labor. His face weathered, but kind. With brown eyes that held a warmth Serena's never could. Once, he'd been a systems maintenance engineer with a promising career, a beautiful wife, and plans for a big family. But cancer doesn't care about plans. When Maria died 4 years ago, leaving him with 3-year-old Lily and medical bills that devoured their savings, Henry made a choice. The engineering job required travel, late nights, constant availability. The night janitor position at Sterling Corporation offered stability, benefits, and most importantly, days free to be the father Lily needed. His pride had taken the hit, but his daughter had a parent who attended every school play, helped with every homework assignment, and tucked her in every single night. Lily Carter was 7 years old and possessed the kind of infectious optimism that made strangers smile on bad days. Her brown curls bounced when she walked, her second-hand floral dresses were always clean and pressed, and her father was her absolute hero. She didn't understand why some kids' parents drove fancy cars while they took the bus, or why their apartment was small while her classmates lived in houses with pools. What she understood was that Daddy never missed a bedtime story, that his hugs could fix any scraped knee, and that his promise to always be there was the one thing she could count on. She was bright beyond her years, reading at a 4th-grade level, solving math problems that stumped her classmates, and possessing an emotional intelligence that let her see through adult pretenses with startling clarity. Alexandra Hall had served as Chief Operating Officer for 3 years, watching Serena transform Sterling Corporation from a family playground into a legitimate powerhouse. At 41, Alexandra had seen enough corporate politics to recognize authenticity when she encountered it. She respected Serena's vision, even if she privately wondered if the Ice Queen Act might eventually freeze Serena's soul entirely. George Ellis, the chief financial officer, was 55 and had worked for the Sterling family for 3 decades. He'd watched the company nearly collapse under the previous generation's greed and had quietly celebrated when Serena took control. These two would prove instrumental in uncovering the truth when the storm hit. though neither could have predicted the catalyst would be a janitor working in the rain. The gala had ended with journalists rushing to file their stories. Sterling heiress cuts off family would dominate tomorrow's business headlines. But the real story was just beginning. In a private dining room 3 blocks away, 5 disinherited heirs sat around a table, their champagne untouched, their faces masks of barely contained fury. Clinton Sterling, 42 and silver-tongued, had already lost his corporate credit cards and executive parking spot. His embezzlement schemes, carefully constructed over 5 years, had crumbled in a single morning. Dante, 38 and built like a linebacker, clenched fists that had solved too many problems with violence. His reputation as the family enforcer meant nothing now. Dermot, 45, thin and calculating, had watched his kickback empire evaporate with Serena's signature. Larissa, 39, beautiful in the artificial way that came from too much surgery and not enough soul, had already been locked out of the company's media contacts. Beatrix, the youngest at 35, ambitious beyond measure, had seen her path to the CEO chair obliterated. "She thinks she can just erase us," Clinton said. His voice, smooth poison. "5 of us, a lifetime of service to this company. And she dismisses us like servants." The plan formed quickly, each heir contributing their particular expertise to the conspiracy. They would destroy Serena Sterling, not through boardroom battles where she excelled, but through a careful campaign of sabotage and scandal that would force the board to remove her. The first target would be the building's infrastructure, creating problems that would reflect her incompetence. The second would be her reputation, particularly her famous inability to trust anyone. They would give her someone to trust, then destroy them both. That night, as rain began to fall, the Sterling Corporation parking garage flooded, not naturally, but through a careful manipulation of drainage systems that Dermot had arranged during his years of skimming maintenance budgets. Henry Carter arrived for his shift to find 3 inches of water covering the executive level, threatening to reach the electrical systems that powered the building's security servers. Without hesitation, he grabbed his tools and waded in. The drainage grate was clogged with debris that shouldn't have been there. Industrial waste, mixed with what looked like deliberately placed blockage. As he knelt in the freezing water, rain pouring through the garage opening, Henry's hands worked with practiced efficiency. Clear the immediate blockage, trace the backup to its source, prevent the electrical hazard that could shut down the entire building. Serena had stayed late, reviewing quarterly reports in her top-floor office when the building's emergency alert system activated. Water in the parking garage, potential electrical hazard, maintenance responding. She should have gone home, let the night crew handle it. But something made her take the executive elevator down. Perhaps it was the irony that on the very day she'd cleaned house, her house was literally flooding. The elevator opened to chaos. Security guards tried to move executive vehicles, their Italian leather shoes sliding on wet concrete. Emergency lights cast everything in harsh yellow. And there, in the middle of it all, was a single figure actually solving the problem. Henry Carter looked like something from another era, a working man who solved problems with his hands rather than conference calls. His uniform clung to his muscled frame, water streaming from his hair, his face set in concentration as he worked. Serena found herself frozen, watching. Then the electrical panel sparked. Henry moved faster than thought, shoving a security guard away from the water just as an arc of electricity shot through where the man had been standing. The guard stumbled, fell safely on dry ground, and Henry took the secondary shock through his wet clothes. He grunted, shook it off, and went back to work, as if saving lives was just part of the job. Serena felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Not attraction, though Henry was undeniably attractive in his raw, physical way. Not gratitude, though he'd just prevented a lawsuit and possible death. It was recognition. Here was someone who did the right thing not for recognition or reward, but because it needed doing. In her world of calculated moves and strategic alliances, Henry Carter was startlingly, dangerously real. The water receded, the crisis passed, and the garage returned to normal. Henry gathered his tools, reported to his supervisor, and continued his shift. He didn't know that the CEO had watched from the shadows. He didn't know that 5 vindictive heirs had marked him as collateral damage in their war against Serena. He only knew that tomorrow was Saturday, and he'd promised Lily they'd go to the park if it stopped raining. Serena returned to her office, but the numbers on her screen seemed meaningless. She pulled up the employee database, found Henry Carter's file. Previous occupation: systems, maintenance engineer. Years of experience: 12. Current position: janitorial staff. Night shift. Salary: $32,000 annually. She cross-referenced his previous employer, found glowing recommendations, commendations for innovation and reliability. Why would an engineer become a janitor? The answer was in the emergency contact. Lily Carter. Daughter. Age 7. The dates aligned with his career change. Something had happened 4 years ago that made Henry Carter trade his career for the ability to be present for his daughter. Monday morning brought the first salvo in the heirs campaign. Clinton had leaked select financial documents to reporters, painting a picture of a CEO losing control. Sources close to the Sterling board report growing concern over Serena Sterling's erratic decisions. Dante had arranged for small but visible security failures throughout the building. Dermot's sabotage was more subtle, maintenance issues that cascaded into larger problems. Larissa worked her media contacts, planting seeds of doubt about Serena's mental state. The pressure of running a billion-dollar corporation while battling her own family may be taking its toll. Beatrix reached out to competitors, suggesting that Sterling Corporation might be vulnerable to acquisition. The board called an emergency meeting, but the centerpiece of their plan was more insidious. Using Dermot's maintenance access and Clinton's knowledge of security protocols, they planted evidence that the parking garage flood hadn't been accidental. Security footage was doctored to show a figure matching Henry's description near the drainage systems an hour before his shift. Work orders were backdated to suggest he'd requested access to areas he'd never visited. Financial records were altered to show small but suspicious deposits into his account. When the investigators came, as the heirs knew Serena would demand, they would find a trail leading directly to Henry Carter. Either Serena would fire an innocent man, proving her cold nature, or she'd defend him and appear compromised. Tuesday's board meeting was brutal. Serena faced 12 board members who'd been fielding calls from reporters, competitors, and angry investors all morning. "The market has lost confidence," one member stated. "Our stock has dropped 8% in 2 days." Another added, "These maintenance failures are creating liability issues. The insurance company is threatening to raise our premiums." But it was the third comment that cut deepest. "Your decision to disinherit 5 family members without board consultation shows a concerning pattern of unilateral action." Serena defended each point with facts and figures, but she could see doubt creeping into their eyes. Then George Ellis presented the preliminary investigation into the garage flooding. The evidence against Henry Carter seemed damning: altered time cards, suspicious financial activity, and security footage that placed him at the scene. The board voted to suspend Henry immediately pending full investigation. Serena knew she should have agreed, should have let the process play out. But something in her rebelled. "No," she said, surprising herself with the vehemence. "I was there. I saw what happened. Henry Carter prevented a disaster. He didn't cause it." The board exchanged glances. "Nevertheless," the chairman said, "protocol demands suspension during investigation." Serena made a decision that would have shocked her past self. "Then I'm assigning him to my direct team as a technical consultant for the duration of the investigation. He'll be where I can observe him personally." The room erupted. A CEO protecting a janitor? The optics were terrible. But Serena held firm, though she couldn't explain why. Henry learned about his suspension that evening, when his supervisor called him into the office. "I'm sorry, Henry. My hands are tied. There's going to be an investigation." Henry's first thought wasn't for himself, but for Lily. The job provided their health insurance, paid for her after-school program, kept them stable. "How long?" he asked quietly. "I don't know. Maybe you should start looking." The supervisor was interrupted by a knock. Serena Sterling herself stood in the doorway, looking impossibly out of place in the dingy maintenance office. "Mr. Carter, you're being temporarily reassigned to the Executive Technical Advisory Team." Same hours, same pay, different duties. Report to the 40th floor tomorrow night. Henry's shock must have shown because Serena's expression softened almost imperceptibly. I was there Saturday night. I know what really happened. This investigation will prove your innocence. But until then, I need someone with your expertise reviewing our infrastructure. It was a lifeline wrapped in corporate speak. And Henry recognized it for what it was, an act of faith from someone who didn't give them easily. Yes, ma'am, he said simply. After Serena left, Henry sat in his supervisor's office for a long moment. He could walk away, avoid the scrutiny and inevitable judgment. But walking away would mean letting whoever had framed him win. More importantly, it would mean teaching Lily that when things got hard, you ran. He'd take the CEO's offer, not because he trusted her, but because he trusted himself. Wednesday brought new complications. Larissa had worked her magic with the gossip columnists. Sterling CEO's midnight meetings, with Janitor raise questions. The article was carefully crafted, never quite stating impropriety but implying it with every word. Serena's phone rang constantly with board members demanding explanations. Meanwhile, Henry reported to the 40th floor, feeling like an intruder in his work boots and uniform among the suits and marble. Alexandra Hall met him at the elevator. The CEO wants you to review the maintenance logs for the past year. Look for patterns, anomalies, anything that might explain the recent failures. She studied him with sharp eyes. She's taking a significant risk for you. Don't make her regret it. Henry spent the night poring over data, his engineering mind reawakening after 4 years of dormancy. The patterns emerged slowly. Budget requests denied, work orders canceled, equipment replacements postponed. All traced back to Dermot's oversight. But more interesting were the approved expenses, components that didn't match building specifications, contractors with no verifiable history, payments that didn't align with work completed. By 3 a.m, Henry had compiled a report that showed systematic fraud going back 5 years. He was so absorbed, he didn't notice Serena enter the conference room until she spoke. Find something interesting? She'd removed her suit jacket, and for the first time, Henry saw her as human rather than corporate deity. There were shadows under her eyes, stress lines around her mouth. Your building is being sabotaged, he said bluntly. Has been for years. These aren't random failures. Someone's been installing substandard equipment and pocketing the difference. Serena moved closer, leaning over his shoulder to see the screen. She smelled like expensive perfume and coffee, a combination that shouldn't have worked but did. Can you prove it? Henry pulled up a work order from 6 months ago. This valve that failed last week? It's listed as a industrial-grade component, but the serial number traces to a residential model that costs a third of the price. Whoever signed off on this knew exactly what they were doing. Thursday's revelation came from an unexpected source. George Ellis had been conducting his own investigation, following the money trail from Henry's supposedly suspicious deposits. The timestamps don't match, he told Serena and Alexandra in a private meeting. The deposits were made from a terminal that requires executive access. Henry Carter was mopping the 3rd floor at the exact moment these transactions occurred. Unless he can be in 2 places at once, he's being framed. Alexandra added her own discovery. The security footage has been edited. I had our IT team do a deep analysis. There are compression artifacts consistent with splicing. Someone with high-level access doctored the recordings. The evidence was mounting. But it wasn't enough. They needed proof of who was behind it. Not just that Henry was innocent. Serena made another unilateral decision. We're going to give them what they want. This Sunday, there's a board meeting to discuss my potential resignation. I'll make sure the building is nearly empty. Just essential maintenance crew. If they're planning something, that's when they'll strike. It was a dangerous gambit. But Serena had learned something from watching Henry work. Sometimes you had to get your hands dirty to fix the problem. Friday passed in tense preparation. Henry coordinated with the legitimate maintenance team, identifying vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Serena worked with Alexandra and George to set up monitoring systems that couldn't be compromised. They told no one else, not even building security. If there were inside collaborators, They couldn't risk exposure. That evening, as Henry prepared to leave, he found Lily in the lobby with his neighbor. Mr. Thompson had an emergency. The elderly woman explained. I didn't know where else to bring her. Lily ran to her father, wrapping her small arms around his waist. Daddy, is this where you work? It's so big. Serena emerged from the elevator at that moment, witnessing the reunion. Lily looked up at her with curious eyes. Are you Daddy's boss? You're pretty. Daddy says you're smart too. Henry's face reddened. Lily, this is Miss Sterling. But Lily had already extended her hand with 7-year-old formality. Pleased to meet you, Miss Sterling. Thank you for being nice to my daddy. Something in Serena's chest tightened. This little girl in her second-hand dress and bright smile was looking at her without fear, without calculation, without want. Just a child being polite because her father had raised her right. Your daddy is helping me solve a very important problem, Serena found herself saying. He's very good at fixing things. Saturday was quiet, the calm before the storm. Henry spent the day with Lily, taking her to the park as promised, pushing her on swings, and listening to her chatter about school and friends and the book she was reading about dragons. But his mind kept returning to the building, to the vulnerabilities they'd identified, to the trap they were setting. Serena spent the day in her penthouse, reviewing every piece of evidence, every pattern they'd uncovered. She'd built her life on control, on predicting every variable, but tomorrow would require her to trust. Trust Henry's expertise, trust Alexandra and George's loyalty, trust her own instincts that had started this entire chain of events. Sunday arrived gray and threatening rain. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon, but Serena arrived at dawn. Henry was already there, having sent Lily to stay with her grandmother for the day. They worked in comfortable silence, checking systems, verifying cameras were operational, ensuring their trap was properly set. Alexandra arrived at noon, George shortly after. The 4 of them took positions throughout the building, connected by secure radio. At 1:45, Dermot's access card activated the maintenance entrance. At 1:50, Clinton entered through the executive garage. By 2 o'clock, all 5 disinherited heirs were in the building, unaware they were being watched. The plan was more ambitious than anyone had anticipated. Dante went straight to the electrical systems, not to cause a temporary outage, but to trigger a cascading failure that would destroy the servers containing financial records. Clinton was in the IT department, uploading a virus designed to corrupt backup systems while making it appear like a hack from Serena's terminal. Larissa was in Serena's office, planting documents that suggested embezzlement on a massive scale. Beatrix was in the boardroom, placing recording devices to capture the board's discussion of Serena's removal. But it was Dermot who had the most crucial role, installing the device that would trigger everything, making it look like a catastrophic maintenance failure that could only be blamed on incompetent leadership. Henry watched Dermot work, recognizing the device immediately. It wasn't just sabotage. It was a bomb, designed to look like an electrical failure. We need to evacuate, he said into the radio. But Serena's voice came back calm and cold. Not yet. We need them to commit fully. George, are you recording? George confirmed he had everything, multiple angles, audio, and video, enough to bury all 5 heirs. Alexandra, contact building security and the police. Tell them to stand by but not enter yet. Henry moved closer to Dermot's position, ready to intervene if necessary. The moment came when Dermot activated the device. Henry had already disabled it, replacing the triggering mechanism with a harmless LED that would flash but nothing more. Dermot's confusion lasted only seconds before he realized the trap. He ran, but Henry was faster, tackling him in the hallway. They struggled, Dermot pulling a knife, slashing at Henry, who dodged and disarmed him with moves learned from years of practical self-defense. Security arrived to find Dermot pinned, Henry's knee on his back, the weapon kicked safely away. One by one, the other heirs were apprehended. Clinton tried to delete the virus evidence but found himself locked out of the system. Dante's attempt to run was stopped by Alexandra, who'd played field hockey in college and still remembered how to take someone down. Larissa was caught red-handed in Serena's office, documents scattered across the desk. Beatrix, seeing the others arrested, tried to bluff her way out, claiming she was there for the board meeting. But the recording devices in her bag told a different story. By 3 o'clock, all 5 were in custody. And the evidence was overwhelming. Conspiracy, attempted destruction of property, fraud, and in Dermot's case, attempted assault with a deadly weapon. Monday's emergency board meeting had a very different tone. Serena presented the evidence methodically, showing not just Sunday's attempted sabotage but years of systematic theft and fraud. The board voted unanimously to support pressing full charges and to formally ban all 5 from any involvement with Sterling Corporation. They also voted to commend Serena's handling of the crisis and to approve her social impact fund without reservation. But the real victory came in a quieter moment. The board chairman stood and said, "I believe we also owe an apology and debt of gratitude to Mr. Carter. His expertise and bravery prevented what could have been a catastrophic loss." Tuesday morning, Henry was officially cleared of all charges and offered his choice of positions within Sterling Corporation. "I appreciate the offer," he told Serena in her office. "But I need flexibility. Lily comes first." "Always." Serena nodded, understanding in a way she wouldn't have a week ago. "Then how about this? Senior maintenance engineer, consulting basis. You set your own hours as long as the work gets done. Full benefits, $65,000 salary, and enrollment in our employee family scholarship program for Lily." Henry studied her, this woman who'd risked everything to protect him when she had no reason to trust. "Why?" he asked. "Simply, because the building needs someone who cares more about doing the job right than playing politics," Serena said. Then, softer. "And because I've learned that sometimes the most valuable people are the ones who don't try to be valuable. They just are." Henry accepted the offer with a handshake that lingered a moment longer than professionally necessary. As he turned to leave, Serena called after him. "Henry, thank you for everything." He smiled. The first real smile she'd seen from him. "Just doing my job, Miss Sterling." But they both knew it had become more than that. Wednesday evening found an unusual scene in the Sterling Corporation cafeteria. Serena Sterling, CEO and billionaire, sat across from Henry Carter, maintenance engineer and single father, while Lily Carter colored between them. They weren't discussing business or the legal proceedings against the 5 heirs. They were simply sharing a meal. Lily had insisted Serena try the cafeteria's chocolate pudding, declaring it almost as good as Daddy makes. Serena, who hadn't eaten cafeteria food since college, found herself enjoying it immensely. Not the pudding, though it was surprisingly good, but the simplicity of the moment. "Miss Sterling," Lily said suddenly, looking up from her coloring. "Are you lonely?" Henry started to admonish her, but Serena held up a hand. "Sometimes," she answered honestly. "Why do you ask?" Lily shrugged with 7-year-old wisdom. "You seem sad when you think nobody's looking. Daddy gets that way sometimes too. Maybe you could be not lonely together?" The innocent suggestion hung in the air between the adults. Henry's face was red, but he didn't look away from Serena's gaze. "Lily." "That's not," he began. But Serena interrupted. "Your daughter is very perceptive and very kind. You've raised her well." As they prepared to leave, Lily grabbed both their hands, one in each of hers, creating a connection between them. It was such a natural gesture, so unconsciously done, that neither adult pulled away. They walked to the elevator like that, Lily chattering about her upcoming school play, where she was playing a tree. "You should come, Miss Sterling." "Daddy always comes, but he sits alone." "You could sit together." Serena found herself agreeing before she'd really thought about it. It wasn't a date, she told herself. It was supporting an employee's child. But when Henry smiled at her, genuine and warm, she knew she was lying to herself. Thursday brought rain again. But this time Serena saw it differently. From her office window, she watched Henry in the parking garage, not dealing with crisis but performing routine maintenance. He worked with the same focus and dedication, whether anyone was watching or not. She thought about the investigation's revelation that he'd been making anonymous suggestions for improvements for years, never seeking credit, just wanting things to work better. How many people like Henry were invisible in her corporation, doing essential work without recognition? The thought led to a new initiative, one that would identify and reward those who kept the company running from the ground up. That evening, she found herself in the garage as Henry finished his shift. "I wanted to thank you again," she said, feeling uncharacteristically nervous. "Not just for Sunday, but for showing me something I'd forgotten." Henry wiped his hands on a rag, giving her his full attention. "What's that?" Serena struggled to find words that didn't sound like a corporate memo. That integrity isn't about grand gestures or public declarations. It's about doing the right thing when no one's watching, in the rain, because it needs doing. Henry stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "You did the right thing too. You could have let them railroad me. It would have been easier." "Easier isn't always right," Serena said softly. They stood there, two people from different worlds, finding common ground in a parking garage. Henry reached out slowly, giving her time to step back, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're not who I expected," he said. "The Ice Queen of Sterling Corporation." Serena laughed, surprising herself. "And you're not just a janitor. You never were." Henry's hand was still near her face, and she found herself leaning into it slightly. "Lily's play is Friday at 6, he said. If you meant what you said about coming." Serena nodded. "I'll be there." Friday afternoon, Serena Sterling did something she'd never done before. She left work early. Her assistant nearly fainted when she said she had a personal commitment. The school auditorium was packed with parents and grandparents, all there to watch 7- and 8-year-olds perform The Forest's Four Seasons. Serena felt out of place in her designer suit among the casual clothes and friendly chatter. Then she saw Henry waving from a middle row, an empty seat beside him, and the discomfort melted away. "You came," he said as she sat down. "I said I would." The lights dimmed before they could say more. Lily was, objectively, a terrible tree. She kept peeking at the audience, waving slightly when she spotted them, and at one point forgot she was supposed to be frozen and scratched her nose. But her joy was infectious. And when she delivered her one line, "And the trees grow strong through every storm," she looked directly at her father and Serena. After the play, Lily bounded over, still in her tree costume. "You both came. Together. Did you see me? I only forgot to stand still twice." She hugged them both, pulling them into a three-way embrace that felt surprisingly natural. Other parents glanced over, recognizing Serena, whispering behind hands. But for once, she didn't care about appearances or reputation. She was just a woman attending a school play with a man and his daughter. "Ice cream to celebrate?" Henry suggested. "I know a place that's open late," Lily cheered, grabbing their hands again. As they walked to Henry's old but meticulously maintained truck, Serena realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd ridden in anything that wasn't a luxury vehicle. But climbing into the cab, Lily between them chattering about her performance, felt more right than any limousine ever had. The ice cream shop was small and family-owned, the kind of place Serena had driven past 1,000 times, but never entered. Lily ordered chocolate with rainbow sprinkles. Henry chose vanilla with caramel, and Serena, throwing caution to the wind, picked strawberry with chocolate chips. They sat in a corner booth, Lily regaling them with behind-the-scenes drama from the play. And then Timothy forgot he was supposed to be Winter Wind and started being a dinosaur instead. As Lily focused on her ice cream, Henry and Serena found themselves talking. Not about work or the investigation or the dramatic events of the past week, but about small things. Books they'd read, places they'd traveled or wanted to travel, music they enjoyed. "I haven't done this in years," Serena admitted. "Just talked." Henry smiled. "You're good at it. When you let yourself be." The conversation flowed naturally, and Serena discovered Henry had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard, making her laugh genuinely for the first time in months. He talked about his late wife without bitterness, about choosing Lily over career without regret, about finding purpose in simple work. She found herself sharing, too, about the loneliness of the executive suite, the weight of family expectations, the fear that she'd become exactly what she'd fought against. As they prepared to leave, Lily had fallen asleep against Henry's shoulder. He carried her easily, her tree costume trailing, at Serena's car. He paused. "This doesn't have to be complicated," he said quietly. "I know our worlds are different, but maybe that's not a bad thing." Serena looked at him. This man who'd saved her company while asking for nothing, who'd raised a wonderful daughter alone, who saw through her carefully constructed facade. "I don't know how to do simple," she admitted. "Then maybe I can teach you," Henry said. "And you can teach me about complicated. Meet in the middle." Saturday morning, the news broke about the 5 heirs' arrests and the attempted sabotage. Serena's phone rang non-stop, but she ignored it. Instead, she was at the park, watching Henry push Lily on the swings. She dressed down, jeans and a sweater, though they were still designer. Other parents didn't recognize her, and she reveled in the anonymity. "Higher, Daddy," Lily squealed. "Miss Serena, watch how high I can go." The little girl had already shortened her name, making it less formal, more familiar. Serena found she liked it. Later, as Lily played with other children, Henry and Serena sat on a bench, not touching but close enough to feel each other's warmth. "The board will have opinions about this," Serena said. "About us," Henry shrugged. "Do you care?" She thought about it. "Less than I would have a week ago." He reached over, took her hand. His was calloused, strong, real. "We don't have to figure it all out today. Or tomorrow. We can just see where it goes." Serena, who planned everything, who controlled every variable, who never left anything to chance, squeezed his hand and said, "Okay." 3 months later, the Sterling Corporation annual report would note record profits and the successful launch of the Sterling Social Impact Fund. What it wouldn't mention was that the CEO had started eating lunch in the cafeteria on Wednesdays, that the senior maintenance engineer had an office on the executive floor he rarely used, preferring to be hands-on, or that a 7-year-old girl had become a regular visitor, doing homework in the conference room while her father worked. It wouldn't mention the quiet dinners, the weekend trips to the zoo, or the way Serena Sterling had learned to laugh again. The rain still fell on Sterling Corporation, but it no longer seemed cold. In her office, Serena would sometimes pause to watch Henry in the parking garage, maintaining the building systems with the same quiet dedication he brought to everything. He'd look up, somehow knowing she was watching, and wave. She'd wave back, no longer caring who saw. The Ice Queen hadn't melted. She'd simply discovered that warmth and strength weren't mutually exclusive. And Henry hadn't changed who he was. He'd just found someone who valued him for exactly that. On a particularly stormy Thursday, as rain lashed the windows and wind howled through the city, the power flickered throughout the building. But the backup systems Henry had installed kicked in seamlessly, the result of months of careful upgrades and maintenance. In the cafeteria, Serena, Henry, and Lily sat together, sharing a simple dinner. The little girl was drawing again, this time a picture of 3 people holding hands.